and welcome to the first episode of Top Chef Season 21, our Food and Dine podcast. Every week we cover each new episode of Top Chef. I am Quiche.
And my name is Gnocchi. And I thought we would kick this off with a quick summary of the episode, just to recap it.
Mhm.
So there was no quickfire this time. There's usually a quickfire, but no quickfire. And then so they went straight into the elimination challenge. And the challenge was actually threefold, or three separate challenges in one. So a certain set of chefs had to make a soup for Kristen, and then the next set of chefs had to make a stuffed pasta for Gail, and then the final set of chefs had to make a whole roast chicken for Tom. They had a budget of $200, and they had 2 hours to cook. The winning dish was by Manny Barella, and he made a green pozole with chicken and charred salsa verde. Quiche, I wanted to ask you, since this is your first official episode of Top Chef, what did you think?
Okay, I loved it. I was so taken by the atmosphere they create with the show. So we've talked before about how I was kind of brought up on traditional Food Network shows and all that stuff. And a lot of those, the whole competition takes place in a day. You know, like Iron Chef takes place in a day. Cupcake Wars takes place in a day, or at least they want you to believe it does, and under certain time constraints. But I found myself getting so excited about the prospect of sticking with this group of chefs for a number of months and just getting to see how each of them respond to different challenges and how they work together with each other. Because I honestly found myself really falling in love with a lot of the chefs that we were seeing. Like we spent so much time discussing them and researching them that I was like, I feel like I know these people.
Yes.
Which I know, delusional, I don't. But it doesn't change the fact that I already felt so like endeared to them and like excited about seeing them on the screen and seeing them compete and succeed and all of this stuff. Obviously we'll be talking more in depth about the winner of the challenges, the top dishes and all this stuff later, but I have so many opinions about that, and I'm just like, I'm so excited about it. So Top Chef in one episode has captured me completely. I love it. I think it's so much fun, and I'm sincerely waiting until next Wednesday, just anticipating. I can't wait. It's so fun. Thank you for introducing me to this. Oh my gosh.
You are so welcome. I am so thrilled. I am loving getting to enjoy the show through your eyes because, after watching 20 seasons, this is now my 21st season. The reason why I wanted to get your thoughts on the episode first is because I am way in the bag for Top Chef. I'm incredibly biased. They can almost do no wrong. Obviously, they'll do wrongs in my mind.
Right.
Because but I'm coming from a place of having watched 20 seasons and having a little bit of not just always in the bag for them, but maybe bringing a lot of baggage with me as well. And so getting to experience it as a newbie again is exciting for me as well.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that I need to talk about in this episode is the new host, Kristen Kish. And
Oh yeah.
as you know, I was very excited that she was going to be the new host. And for those who maybe don't know, she was the winner of Top Chef season 10. And so it's almost this full circle moment. I was reading a lot of articles, and apparently Padma Lakshmi, the former host, her stepping down so she could focus on her award-winning show, Taste the Nation, her stepping down was a bit of a surprise, and they actually didn't know who they were going to come in and replace. And it's honestly the transition from Padma to Kristen, in my mind, seamless. And some other reviews I read talked about how since she was a former competitor, she's bringing that perspective into the show. And you see it immediately, for example, when the chefs were introducing themselves to the judges, and she said, okay, when I asked about Michelin star experience or James Beard Award, who didn't raise their hands, and then some chefs did, and she said, hey, look, when I was here on season 10, I had a job as a sous chef and no awards, and yet I still won. Just that alone showed you immediately that she's going to be a different kind of host, because she's bringing that to the show with her, bringing that different angle. So not just food expertise, which Padma had, but also I have been through this, so I know. I'm loving that perspective.
I am too. I think that's a really good point. I was excited to see kind of like this really kind, compassionate element that she brought to the table as both the host and a judge. Because, you know, you have other judges and like other cooking shows where the judges can just feel like so harsh and disconnected from the challenge itself. But knowing that Kristen did go through the Top Chef circuit and she experienced what it's like to be eliminated, what it's like to come back, what it's like to win, all with that, you know, not being like the high accoladed award-winning chef at the time, like, I don't know, it brings this really incredible nuance to the judging table, I feel like.
Yeah.
Not talking bad about the last host, of course, but
No.
I feel like I'm already biased toward Kristen because I'm starting Top Chef with her, so.
Exactly. No shade on Padma. Hey, there's a
No.
reason the show went on for 20 seasons, and Padma, great host. There's a reason she has an award-winning show now. No shade. So, yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about besides the host was the fact that there was no quickfire challenge. And before I weighed in, I want to hear what the newbie thinks of this.
Okay, so I was keeping like a running list of notes while I was watching the episode, and like you had prepared me. You were like, okay, there's going to be a quickfire challenge, and then there's going to be an elimination challenge, and then this and that and this and that. And then they were like, no quickfire. And in my notes, I literally wrote, stop playing these games. Like, I was expecting the quickfire challenge. Like, that's what I had mentally prepared for. And so they were like, oh, no, we're just jumping into elimination. I was like, oh my gosh. And that's one of those things that really clued me in that it's gonna be different than the other TV shows. Because those, even when there are surprises, do follow more of a structure. And of course, Top Chef has its own structure. But the fact that they're willing to shift that up on the very first episode of the season, I think that speaks volumes to both the way that the show is structured, the way that they want to test these chef testants, but it also, I was caught off guard by it, and I was a little miffed because I wanted to see a quickfire challenge first, but I liked the way that it progressed in the episode regardless. I felt like even though there wasn't the quickfire challenge, we were still given the same amount of excitement and cooking that I would have expected from a regularly structured episode.
Oh, interesting. And I wonder if part of that was, and we'll get to it a little bit later, was the fact that they had like a bottom 3 dishes chef cook-off.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I loved that. We will talk about that, but oh my gosh, that was insane.
My first feeling as a longtime Top Chef watcher was feeling a little bit cheated.
Really? Oh no.
No, in the sense of one of my favorite parts of the show is what they refer to as they called it in the dish with Quiche after the show, they called it the scratch and sniff, where they show you the up close shots of the food. So of course, if there's a quickfire, you're going to get, you know, how many chefs were there? 15. We missed out on 15 beauty shots of 15 dishes, right?
Dang it.
Because there wasn't a quickfire. The other thing is, and I read this in a review, one of the reviewers said, I felt a little bit cheated out of seeing what the chefs could do in a quickfire, because you really get to know them up front with that first quickfire. What are their skills? What are they going to do in the 20, 30, 40 minutes that they give them? So I was a little bit on that side of it, like, oh man, no quickfire. But also it's coming because I'm bringing in 20 seasons of baggage, and I'm expecting to see that quickfire as a way to meet each of the contestants, right?
That's fair. Yeah.
And I had to try to set aside the fact that because you and I did an intro, like you said, I already felt like I knew the chef testants. So, but that being said, by the end of the episode, I did not miss it. But up front, I was like, oh man, I'm feeling a little cheated. But no, by the end, I felt satisfied by the end.
That's good. I do have a question for you though, kind of in regards to, you said that the dishes that we get from the Quickfire Challenge are a good way to get to know the chef. I'm curious about what your first, because yes, we did do probably a stalker worth amount of research on each of these chef testants, but I'm curious about when you see them on the screen and you see them talking to each other and interacting with each other, are there any chefs that stood out to you that you're like, I like what this person's bringing to the table, I'm excited about this person? I know I have a couple, but I want to hear who you thought was a standout.
I am glad you brought that up. So on the one hand, initially I felt like I missed the quickfire, but on the other hand, I really enjoyed some of the clips they showed of the chef testants getting to know one another. I wrote down in my notes, oh, this is a really cute segment where they're all talking about, oh, I live in Chicago. Oh, you should come visit me. And it's almost as though because they focused on the elimination challenge, it actually gave us more time to get to know the chef testants outside of the kitchen. Bolstered, of course, by the fact that we had done so much research.
Right.
I was like, oh, there's Dan, the local guy, and he's making sure everyone, you know this is Midwestern nice and all those. He had some really great, what was it, sound bites, Midwestern are nice. Is
Yeah.
another one that stood out to me was Kaylina Bliss. Even in all the pre-show research that you and I did, I did not pick up on the fact that she was also Korean American. And so now she's not one of my, I'm not saying she's a favorite. Okay. I'm just saying she's a little more on my radar now that I recognize that she's, another Asian American on the show along with Kenny Wynn. So in terms of skills wise, just in the little intro sections, I can't say for sure those, but just like Dan and Kalina stood out to me, probably because I'm Midwestern and Asian American.
I like that.
So but you mentioned that you had a few.
I do, but before I do that, I did want to, I copied down a quote that Kaylina said just because I thought it was so fun. So I wanted to share that.
Yeah.
When she's talking about how she was brought up and she has more experience with coastal food and food from the Pacific Northwest, she was talking about the Midwestern style of food, and she said, it's cheese, it's beer, and it's definitely meat and potatoes, and I mean that in a good way. And I loved that quote. I thought that was like quintessential, to the point, so true, and also kind of funny.
Thank you for writing that down, because when she said that, I was nodding vigorously. Yes.
Yeah.
No notes.
Where's that casserole?
Bring it, please.
So I'm excited about her. The two chefs that I'm excited about, I will say I did not choose these chefs because of the outcome of the challenge. They were already on my radar because I was doing a lot of research on them. Michelle Wallace, as you know, I already love her.
I remember.
I think her background as a pitmaster is so exciting. Also, when they were all introducing themselves to each other and they were all talking with each other, I know one of the contestants was like, oh, so I'm the oldest person here. And she was like, nope. And I was like, yeah, claim seniority. Like, it's yours. Take it. It's so exciting. So I love her. I love what she's bringing to the table. And I'll talk more about what she did in the Elimination Challenge and how it excited me.
Yeah.
But I was also really excited about Manny because I love his entertainment and like the concepts he's bringing of like Mexican style dishes and flavors and mixing them with American flavors and other cooking practices. But he just seemed like this big, loving teddy bear kind of guy. And it was so sweet because I'm watching him work throughout it and he's just being encouraging to other people and, being like, you got this, it'll be okay, like it'll be great. It just, king and queen of my heart right there in Top Chef. I'm already on their side 100%.
I love that because you reminded me when we were researching these chefs, I was actually intimidated. I found, obviously I'm not a chef, but if I were a chef, I would feel intimidated by these chefs, looking at their experience, their very impressive CVs, and then seeing them on the show. And obviously you're going to see someone talking and speaking and interacting with others. It instantly humanized them and made them feel much more approachable and seem nicer than they looked on paper. Because obviously I guess in your CV, you're going to put the most impressive, daunting things. And it's like, oh, they're real people and they're really nice.
Right. Yeah. They can make jokes and they can like have a good time. That is another thing that stood out to me between Top Chef and other cooking shows that I'm used to. I feel like with the other cooking shows, since you do have that expedited time that the person is going to be in front of the camera, they do come with that like first foot forward of like, this is my professionalism side, these are all the accomplishments that I've had, this is what I'm gonna do, this is what I have done, all these different things, and you don't really get as much of that personality side. You might get a bit of like, this is how I was brought up, this is the cooking practices that I've experienced, these are what I'm learning, like these are the different skills, but you don't get to see that like joking around as much. Like I'm thinking about in like the American version of Iron Chef, you might hear them like jab at the Iron Chef and like, these fun little short quips, but you don't really get to know them as much as you do in this case. Honestly, it feels like following a narrative TV show almost. Yeah. Like it's this interesting place between reality television and a narrative story, which I'm really enjoying because I do enjoy storytelling and I do enjoy cooking, and having that be like happening at the same time is really cool.
Write that down. I love that storytelling. And oh my goodness, I just want to bottle the things you say. It's like, oh, look how smart she is.
Oh my gosh, my ego cannot stand this. You should not be saying that.
I want to, hopefully I don't forget, before we end the episode, I definitely want to talk about who you think your favorites might be going forward.
Okay. All right, yeah.
Because I know you got Manny and Michelle, and I'm not surprised. And the thought that I had is that you may have called it early, but let's save that for the end.
Yeah. All right.
The other thing I wanted to talk about, which was a bit of a surprise to me, was immunity.
Oh my gosh, they keep changing things. I'm not prepared.
So I feel like I really tainted the pool with all my talk about immunity in our intro episode. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on immunity being part of, I guess, the prize for winning the elimination challenge and not the quickfire?
Yeah. I mean, right now, like that feels totally deserved.
Okay.
I've seen the work. Manny got it. Obviously, I don't know where I'm going. This is a little too early for me to say it, but Manny got it. And like he totally deserved it with the dish that he made. Like it was absolutely warranted. It was totally earned. So right now I think that's a good idea. I think it's cool. I love the little bit of like funniness / confidence he had where he was like, so I can just keep going for immunity every single time.
Right?
Like I can still get immunity from this dish that I had immunity on, so I can just go all the way to the top like that. And I was like, oh, okay.
I love that.
Yes, the confidence. I loved it.
So, as you know, I was so excited when I thought immunity was going away from the show. And I had seen a mention about immunity being still on the table in one of the articles I read in the run up to doing our intro podcast, but I only saw it mentioned one place. And I thought, well, maybe it's just a typo, or I just counted that one article I saw. And my feelings on when I saw that it was going to be part of, the prize for winning the elimination, I actually had the same thought you had, which is actually that may be more fair because eliminations are typically pretty hard. And if you win that, then winning immunity seems like a fair prize. On the other hand, look, it's going to cause drama, which makes for good TV. And it's cause a little bit of element of chance and mystery in the show. And I get that. So we'll see how it plays out this season.
You can live with it.
We'll see how it plays out this season. Because the other thought I had was one of the things about winning immunity in the quickfire so that you couldn't be eliminated in that same day. It always felt to me like the prize was relevant to the day, I guess. And now it's going to be you get immunity, you have immunity for the whole next episode.
Yeah.
Or I guess for the next elimination.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I'm thinking this is because in the trailers and the teasers, they keep showing Kristen telling the chefs, you need to cook to win. And I see that paired with the fact that immunity is still on the table. And I'm wondering if maybe chefs are laying back a little bit more than they should be. But that's a lot to read into a microsecond teaser trailer where they're always trying to mislead you.
Yeah.
We'll just see how immunity plays out this season.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun.
That's what someone with 20 seasons of baggage has to say about immunity still being on the table.
You're like, I can't believe they've done this, but I will keep watching. It's fine. I can really hear you gritting your teeth. So the elimination challenge was then technically the first challenge that we got to see these chef testants take part in this season of Top Chef. I thought it was done in a cute, fun way where there was the knife block and all the knives had the different names on them of like the different judges. My first thought was, man, I want a knife with my name on it. That sounds so cool. But then like, I don't know, it was probably like taped on or something like that. I don't think it was engraved, but I loved it how they split it into 3 different groups. And the primary judge being, I guess, each of the different judges from those groups. So the groups that we had were the pasta people, the soup people, and the whole roasted chicken people. I don't know. Is this something that's happened in Top Chef before where they like split up the elimination challenge into these 3?
I'm trying to remember specifically if they split up eliminations into different. I feel like they've done something like this before, and it makes sense to me in terms of early on in the episode in a season when you have this many chefs. Breaking it up this way makes it easier. I would say not only just for us viewers, right? Because that's a lot to hold in your head. 15 different chefs, 15 different dishes
with the same prompt.
But also, for the judges, they have to eat 15 different dishes, right? So in a sense, it makes sense. It's easier.
Yeah.
So I get that.
I mean, I think you're right. Yeah, it breaks it down so that instead of judging 15 pasta dishes, you're judging a smaller amount and then picking the best out of those.
Yeah.
Same with the soup, same with the chicken. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I thought it was really cool how they were all using the same kitchen space. I thought that was like, first of all, for me, I would not be able to do that. I would get so stressed out. I'd be like, someone stole my tomatoes and then I just misplaced them. So I thought it was cool how they all went into the same kitchen and they kind of did it in like a rotational shift kind of thing. I thought that was cool because also the way that they served those dishes to the judges almost felt like not really, kind of, but close to a 3-course meal. Because they started out with the pasta,
Oh,
which is like,
yeah.
good opener. And then they go to a soup,
Mhm.
which is pretty open-ended. So you can have what you want in that. And then they round it off with chicken, which I know is more of like a main dish thing, probably. Still, I liked it how it was done in 3 courses. And so these judges are getting almost like a 3-course meal experience from all these different chefs put together.
Yeah, I like the way you described that. Like it was like a meal for the judges. It's probably a little bit easier for them too.
Yeah.
And the way that they had, I loved how they had the judges sitting, at the counter, I guess, almost like a chef's counter, and they're watching the chefs, almost like arena style, right?
Yeah.
The other aspect that I really like about it is if you're a chef in a restaurant, that's really how it's probably going to be for you, right? Where you're not in the kitchen by yourself. You have a lot of other things going on around you.
That's true.
Also, that setting and the way they did it in the restaurant, and this is something they've gotten better with over the seasons, is getting the food to the judges as quickly as possible, right? Because it's going to taste better, when you get it, as opposed to
Right.
however long it goes until it gets.
Yeah, you don't want to like stick it in the fridge for 20 minutes. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Like the timer went up and it looked like they pretty much delivered those dishes from what it looked like, the way they cut it. So pretty close to a la minute.
Yeah, they did. And because there was even, I think it was Kenny who ran into a time issue with that, not being able to plate all of the different parts of the roasted chicken that he intended to. So yeah, it seemed like they were really on point with timing in this elimination challenge.
Yeah, and we'll get back to Kenny and his roast chicken when we get to the part where we talk about the kids who are on the bottom of the challenge.
I know, so sad.
And I remember I wanted to ask you what you would have done. This was a little bit complicated because when I saw this, I knew that we were going to have a what would Quiche have done instead segment, right?
Right.
But then they got 3 different things. I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a real what would she have done?
That's okay. I picked a specific group to put myself in.
Okay, excellent. Well, please.
Okay, so for this little segment of the show, I'm going to be talking about what I would have done in this challenge, what dish I would have made from my own mind. And I given so many options, so many exciting options too, because I love making soups. I think those are excellent and have a lot of foundational skills for cooking, just with building flavors and all this stuff, which is something I think they touched on in the show. But recently I've been kind of obsessed with pasta for a little bit too long. So I've been thinking a lot actually about like ravioli fillings, which I know that's not something that's usually like on the mind, but it's like actually been on my mind for a while now. So the dish that I would, and also I'm not touching the roast chicken. Oh my gosh, like I'm not even getting close to that. If there's one thing I don't know my way around, it's a chicken. So no thanks. We're putting the pasta in the plate here. So for me, what I would have done, I would have made a ravioli stuffed with pear and pecorino romano cheese with a rosemary butter sauce and roasted crushed pecans for garnish on top with some fresh cracked white pepper. There you go.
That sounds so good. Is this something that you dreamed about making, or have you actually attempted to make this? Are you
This is something that I dreamed about because I've gone through like so many extensive lists about different pairings of flavors that you can put into ravioli. Some of them are like pear and ricotta, or like I feel like ricotta is like a very traditional stuffing for ravioli. So I was looking into what pairs well with pear and all this stuff, and what I ended up settling on concept wise was a kind of like a charcuterie board, like a nice like gardeny charcuterie board flavor profile is the way that I would describe it. So with the pear, obviously that's like a light kind of, I would say almost dessert flavor. You see pear in a lot of desserts and cobblers and stuff like that, paired with the cheese. So I wanted to kind of keep that going. You already have like, pretend you have a beautiful brown walnut cheese board in front of you, right? And you're like slowly adding these different things to the cheese board. So you have the pear, you have the cheese, and then you have like sprigs of rosemary, so you get that flavoring with it as well, and in the butter sauce, so it's dispersed throughout the sauce that's, these ravioli are being tossed in. And then I wanted to add just a little bit of crunch to it, so you have the roasted pecans. And then for white pepper, that was a very specific choice. I could have done like the fresh cracked black pepper, which I feel like is easier. Like we tend to gravitate more toward black pepper, but I wanted to use white pepper because it has not as aggressive of a flavor profile as black pepper. So it's more subtle. Sometimes it's described as a little earthy, so I felt like that fit in well with this charcuterie board herb garden dish. And that's what I did. And you know what? I got so excited about it. I'm already planning out my grocery list to go buy the ingredients and try to make it myself.
charcuterie board stuffed pasta ravioli. Put that on a menu somewhere. I'm buying it. That sounds so good.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Well, actually, we have to see if it tastes good first. I don't know. I pick flavors I think would work, but I don't know if they actually would in practice.
I'm going to assume that you created a winning dish.
Oh, stop. Oh my gosh, put myself up against Manny and Michelle? I would never. Oh my, I'm here to support them. I would sabotage myself for them. I love them.
I say you would have been a contender.
Oh, thank you. I thought that pasta was like a really good challenge because it's like, it's a fun thing, but it's also a complicated thing because, you know, you're making your own dough. It's not like you can buy dough from the store, even though I'm sure they probably sell that at Whole Foods. Aside, I loved the Whole Foods montage. I love Kevin just like vibing in Whole Foods. He's just like, oh, what's that? Oh, okay. All right. Wow. Like that was such a fun energy he brought to the Whole Foods market. But anyway, yeah, the pastas. So I thought there were some really interesting fillings and some interesting takes that were done. I was surprised about how much you were name dropped in this episode. Gnocchi. There were two different chefs, Alicia and David, who both opted for a stuffed gnocchi pasta dish. Whether that turned out for them or not, to be seen. But I really loved just the different choices that each of these chefs made to fill their pasta with, because you had some that were more coastal inspired of these seafood flavors. You had some that were focused more on like a spiced ground beef and like a curry sauce and all these different things, goat cheese ricotta, like all these different flavors. And it was really cool to see the different ways that the chefs took the same direction.
The moment I heard, was it David and Alicia say they were going to stuff a gnocchi? In my mind, I thought, oh no, there's no how, there's no way. And I feel like the edit that they gave Michelle was not only because she ended up being in the top for her group, but it's also a little bit to throw you off the fact that if you know anything about pasta, you know the stuffing in gnocchi is just how, right?
Yeah, right.
I thought they did a really good job with the edit there.
I think you're right. I think they did.
I mean, maybe there's a stuffed gnocchi dish out there in the world that's amazing. I would great, but how are you going to do that on a show where you're not allowed any recipes?
Yeah,
and
right. Yeah,
it's supposed to be a pillow of pasta, so lighter than air. You stuff it.
It's like a dense ravioli then, like dense. I feel like that was the main criticism that the judges did have about that, is that it's like, oh, it was like kind of, it didn't really fit the motif that pasta is, like what pasta is traditionally characterized as. Right. With Michelle, I loved what she did in the kitchen though, how she went for the grill. She was like, I don't care. I was put on pasta. I'm going to grill the things that I need to grill for the rest of the dish. Like I loved how she was so ready to just take her pitmaster status to the kitchen and be like, I know I was assigned pasta. I'm still going to use the skills that I have. I thought that was a really great kind of intuitive choice of her, because like she's using what she knows best and she's incorporating it into other areas. So I appreciated that. I thought that was really good.
I want to say it's good that you picked up on that about Michelle, because typically the chefs that do well over a season are those chefs who are able to combine their backgrounds with a challenge and actually make it work. And that's what Michelle did, right? Because if you can do that, right? Because all you have when you come onto that show, you're not allowed recipes. What are your skills? What are you able to do? And can you apply it to a challenge? And Michelle was able to do that very successfully, which means, you know, you've got your eye on her. Now I've got my eye on her, because that's a real skill for Top Chef. And the other thing that I wanted to just sidebar a little bit on was Rasika and her pasta. I mentioned that one of the things about Top Chef, I like to joke that everything I learned about food, I learned from Top Chef. A lot of things that I learned about food. So I can remember the first time I heard the word jicama was season 1 of Top Chef, 18 years ago. I don't know how many people in the world knew what jicama was. I certainly didn't know what it was. It's like, jicama, what is this? My food knowledge has grown because of Top Chef.
Definitely.
And Rasika, she made a dish where I literally had to look up every single element of her dish. And I loved what she said in one of her little interviews. She said, Rasika-fy. And I said,
yeah, that was cute.
I love you. I got my eye on you, girl. Aww. That was the cutest thing. And she really did. Rasika-fy, because she
Mm-hmm.
used ground beef in a dish where you would just never use ground beef. And also what she made
Right.
wasn't technically a pasta. So I looked all these things up.
Yeah.
I appreciate that because I learned 15 things I didn't know just from
Just the one dish.
a little segment, right?
Yeah. Do you have any soups that stood out to you apart from the either the top of the line or bottom of the line people?
The soups. I appreciated that Kristen's challenge was soup.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I'm really enjoying, and this they're not shying away from the fact that they're
Yeah.
utilizing the fact that she used to be a contender. They're
Yeah.
taking advantage of the fact that they have 20 years, right? So for example, when David made the joke about hats, they showed
20 years worth of bad hats.
terrible hats. The second he said Tom's hat game and then made that noise, I said, yes, actually that's correct. Tom's hat game.
You're like, wow, you're so right. And I was like, I didn't know we wore hats. Okay. Good to know.
So I like that they're digging deep, and they're really taking advantage of the fact that they have 20 years to lean, 20 seasons to lean on.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that that was Kristen's very first challenge to even get on Top Chef.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about food, which I know you do, soup is deceptively simple, right? Just like
Yeah.
pasta, deceptively simple, but technically difficult to actually make a really
Mm-hmm.
good, well-flavored, well-seasoned soup, right? And then the other reason why the soup challenge stuck out to me is because while I was watching the show,
Mm-hmm.
I was eating ramen.
Oh my goodness.
And, and I was actually in the midst of committing a food crime.
Ooh.
So,
Okay, go on.
if you'd like to assemble the jury,
We have the jury assembled.
you bang the gavel.
Court is in order.
Here we go. Here we go.
Tell us.
If you may recall, I have a close relationship with ramen. When I say ramen, I'm talking instant ramen,
Mm-hmm.
not your fancy go to a restaurant, not Ivan's ramen or Momofuku Ko ramen or not Michelin star ramen. No, we're talking about the packet.
Yeah.
I know for many people that probably right just in and of itself is a food crime. Okay, all right. And how I believe I had mentioned to you in the past that some of us kids, many kids, you would just take the ramen out of the packet dry, sprinkle the seasoning on it, and that would be like a to-go snack, right? And I remember you feeling horror.
I'm still concerned.
Yeah, no. So when I make the ramen, this is something else that many of us do. We'll add things to it, right?
Mhm.
Like we'll add extra bouillon because it's just not salty enough for us.
They're not salty enough.
We'll add a slice of American cheese, or we'll add, an egg. And then it's complete meal, honestly, at that point. Come on.
Right, right.
So what I like to do is I'll make my ramen, and then you have the broth. And I was like, why don't I just save this broth? And then the next time I make ramen, I'll have that, and then I'll be able to add another seasoning packet. All right. How many times can I save this broth until it just gets too much, too dark
Gosh.
and salty? It's about 3 times
Oh my gosh, you did it?
on a regular basis.
No.
Regular.
What? This is a repetitive food crime? This isn't a one and done thing? You're a repeat offender here? Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh.
How salty is the broth though? Like after you've done that a couple times, is it like would kill a snail on sight, or is it like
I mean, yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Not salty enough, but yes. Yes, yes. To answer your question, yes.
Not salty enough, but would murder a snail just if the snail looked at it. Okay. I
Yes.
think that answers my question.
So I have my arms out, ready for the handcuffs. Take me away. What's my sentence?
All right. Well, I've never heard this before. I've never heard anyone do this before. So I think I'll take that into account. So for your sentence, I will generously give you 3 months.
Oh.
One for each of the ramen uses. But you're in solitary because that's crazy. I don't know. You'll have me thinking about it next time I make dollar ramen for myself.
Well, this is the question.
Okay.
If the answer is no, then you should never do this. Is salt a food group for you?
No.
Then you should never do this.
Okay, your sentence is now up to 4 months because I think that gives me an idea of how salty you think something is okay. Okay, that brings us back into the show though. With the soup, Amanda made a soup, and the main complaint about it was that it was too salty. The citrus gremolata was too salty. And this is a learning moment for me. I had never heard the word gremolata before. Gremolata or gremolata, which is an Italian thing, and I looked that up.
Ooh.
It's an Italian condiment made of parsley, garlic, and lemon zest. I heard that word a lot when we were watching the episode. But going back to Amanda, she had a chicken and dumpling soup dish with citrus gremolata. I've learned now that if a judge immediately gives a critique, like while the tasting is still going on, that's bad news.
Ooh.
Because they could share that after all the chefs have left and when they're deciding the fate. But if they say it to the chef testant, that's a scary thing.
Oh yeah, and Dan, my man, he made a really good, what was it, a tomato and fennel broth for some seafood. It just looked good on camera. And the judges seemed to like it. Really, really seemed to like it.
Oh yeah. No, I think his group in all was excellent. They all brought really good dishes to the table. That was Charlie, Manny, and Dan. And my note, I wrote, such a happy group of three, because, you know, they left the judges table hugging each other.
Yeah.
And I love that for them. I think that's so cute.
Yeah.
But yeah, they each brought something really unique and well composed. For Charlie's, I was interested in it. The corn and ham soup with pickled shrimp.
Yeah, and of course Charlie being, I think he's the Haitian chef, so I got my eye on him because
he's also fun.
Yeah, so he's the Haitian chef. Yeah, I was excited to see him.
Yeah,
and I felt so bad for Amanda.
Oh, I know. That was really rough. I mean, you could tell, like, obviously all these chefs are putting their heart and soul into making these dishes. So to get immediate feedback and then going back to your dish and realizing that, like, yeah, it didn't actually like hit the mark. That's gotta be painful. Yeah. My last notes for the soup section before we move on to the chicken girlies was Manny is the love of my life and eligible for the win. Okay. That was like my last note. He's got a fan. I'm a fan. Just wanted to share that.
And he's your pick to win?
See, because it's difficult because I really love Michelle still. I think I want to wait a little bit because right now I said they're the king and queen of my heart and Top Chef.
Yeah.
So I'm going to wait a second just to see where it goes. But Manny like surprised me because when we were doing the research, I was all in on Michelle, but then I did a little more research about Manny and then like seeing what he brings to the table and the encouragement that he gives the other chefs. He was encouraging Danny, who was in the chicken group, just saying like, yeah, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna get it all done. That melted my heart like a piece of butter on a warm skillet to be cooking. So I think without further ado, we should get into the chicken group, the last group on the table. Are there any chicken dishes that you found interesting?
Honestly, so poor Kenny, because I love the concept. Pho, butter, roasted chicken. I love pho.
Sounds delicious.
I love butter. Chicken, I don't love it, but if you fry it or add really good flavors with chicken, I can love a chicken dish for sure.
Yeah.
Pho, butter, roasted chicken. Yes, please, please. So that was really, I mean, because they all sounded good, but his was the one that sounded the most.
Yeah.
I just never heard of that before.
Yeah. He was bringing in like unique flavors, and even the judges ended up saying like, yeah, those warm spices that were used for this dish were really good and like well placed, well seasoned and all this stuff, but it just ended up not being the right moment for him in that.
And actually, so Boudreaux, who won season 19 and season 20, so he won a regular season, then he won World All-Stars.
Ooh, fancy.
The following season. So he won back-to-back seasons. I just ruined seasons 19 and 20 for you.
Nice. That's okay. I'm only here for Kristen. I don't care what happened before this moment.
He wrote I don't know if it's going to be a regular thing, but he wrote a review of episode 1 for People. He gave Kristen props, which I do as well. I thought she did a really good job, and then stepping into some really big shoes.
She did.
And one of the things that Boudreaux mentioned in his review was he recognized why Kenny didn't get the dark meat on the plate, and it was because from what he saw on the show, just we only see what we see, right? But he said that the dark meat, Kenny's dark meat, actually looked raw, so it was smart of him to just not even put it on the plate and just say he didn't finish. Like he would have been on the bottom if he had, either way.
Okay,
so just,
right. I think it's the lesser of two evils to leave the food off rather than serve them raw chicken for sure.
Yeah.
Oof.
But man, that sucks because I really like the concept a lot. With the pho butter roasted.
Yeah. No, it sounds delicious. It sounds so good.
Rub me in pho butter, roast me.
That's the way I want to go.
The rest of the dishes, they sounded fine, and and of course I had my eye on Kalina only because I once she said I'm a Korean American. I was like, okay, let's see what Kalina's gonna do. It seemed like she did okay. Yeah, it seemed like she did fine.
Yeah, I think she did. Yeah, I mean it was a little bit out of her wheelhouse because it's chicken. That's not a sea creature, unless you're counting chicken of the sea, but that's tuna. That doesn't count.
Yeah.
But you notice she did find ways, similar to what Michelle was doing by using her pitmaster skills. Kaylina found ways to incorporate things that she already does and knows in cooking. So one of the facts that we brought up about her is that she likes using foraged ingredients. So she's using a lot of mushrooms, and she brought that into her dish, which was very exciting to see. I was like, this is what I know she was bringing to the table, and I'm so happy we get to see that in the very first episode. I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm not too big of a chicken girly, so the flavors and the accompaniments for these dishes is really what stood out to me more. But in some of those cases, the criticism by the judges was that it overshadowed the chicken, which I think in my book, I'd be like, nice, good, great, love that. But I mean, obviously for the purposes of the challenge, that's not what needed to happen. So let's go to the top of the line people and the bottom of the line people.
Sure.
In total, overall, we had Kenny, Amanda, and David for the bottom of the line dishes, and Michelle, Manny, and Danny for the top of the line dishes. And I believe we mainly touched on all of their dishes a little bit already. I think we can get more into the chef testings who are at the bottom of the challenge, just because they encountered a subsequent challenge right after getting the news that they were the three on the bottom. Kenny, we just discussed that in the chicken section. For Amanda, her gremolata was too salty. In the soup section, and for David, he had the
mushroom stuffed gnocchi.
Right, his mushroom stuffed gnocchi didn't end up hitting the mark. But would you like to explain to us what happened the minute they were all brought up to the table, thinking one of them was going home that instant?
So yes, what happened? So there were three on the bottom, and instead of just choosing one of the three on the bottom to go home, they had the three on the bottom do a little, I guess, mini cook-off.
Yeah.
How would you describe it?
chance at redemption, last chance, last ditch effort.
Yeah. So they had 20 minutes and they could use the leftovers. I know that you loved it. And I actually, once I got over there not being a quickfire thing, this almost in a way kind of, in a little bit of a way, made up for missing out on those dishes that you would have gotten in quickfire.
Yeah.
This was, in a sense, a quickfire, but only with 3 contestants. I do kind of like it in the sense that you could make anything you want. So you don't really have, like, whereas you could say, oh man, I can't make pasta, or man, I can't make
a whole roasted chicken.
Which you could argue, oh yeah, it's a little unfair. Now it's like, okay, make whatever you want.
Right.
It feels like it makes the elimination a little more fair.
In terms of like reality cooking shows, it was a very kind of engaging choice, I think, because you could send them into a kitchen that's fully stocked and be like, make your best dish. But this, they were just like, put something together, make a plate, make a good plate. And I thought that was really cool. I was surprised though, because it seemed like this would have been in David's wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Because his whole thing is cooking from, scraps, things that people don't traditionally use, things that are overlooked. So I thought that this would be an area that he could shine, but he struggled the most out of all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that really surprised me too. Like, I was a little stunned. I was like, oh, David, no. Because I was a little bit rooting for him. His upcycled ingredients, his Shuggy's trash pie. I'm already a fan just from that approach alone.
Yeah.
But, you got to say, the thing about Top Chef is, and a lot of these cooking competitions, it's not just because you're the best chef. It's, are you the best chef who can also think quickly on your feet without a recipe?
That's so true.
And the chefs that can excel at that, those are the ones who are typically going to do a little bit better on the show. So poor David. I felt so bad for him.
Yeah. It was rough for him. I was happy to see Amanda kind of stepping up in that moment, though, because I thought it was so funny. She said, I checked everything. Each time I added something new, I tasted it, and I made sure it was not too salty. It was good. And I was like, yeah, you go, girl. Like, they won't catch you slipping again. Those dishes that were made was, David made a poached shrimp with sun gold tomatoes, coconut cilantro broth, and green curry sauce. Kenny made Vietnamese cabbage salad with, was it sake and tamari shrimp? Yeah, cilantro lime gremolata and hazelnuts.
Yeah.
And Amanda made a snapper crudo. Amanda made a snapper crudo with hominy puree topped with crispy tortilla pieces for texture. I thought Amanda's was really fleshed out. It felt like a complete dish, especially with the thought of crisping up those tortillas to make a garnish. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
So we're left without David, the season 21 of Top Chef will move forward without him, and Manny is the one who has claimed immunity for the next elimination challenge. I would say it was a very, very compelling first episode of a Top Chef season. I think it sets up for a really, really exciting trajectory.
You messaged how much you said this is a great episode, and would you like to go a little deeper into that?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with some of the things that I've talked about. Just the fact that we're going to get to see not just 3 courses, as in maybe a traditional cooking show, but you're going to get to see a lot of different courses, a lot of different types of food, styles of food over the course of a number of months. And to that end, you also get to see these different chefs grow. With Amanda as an example, you see she made a mistake. She didn't go home for that, but you'll see how she learns from that and the ways that she pivots her work.
Yeah.
And also I'm curious to see just how, because obviously like these judges are incredible, but each person has their own palate and it's going to be different than the others. So I'm curious to see how these chefs kind of pick up on that, what these different judges like, maybe what they don't like, things that they just absolutely can't stand, things that they love, and see how the aspect of getting to know someone and building this Top Chef community will impact the dishes that are brought to the table. And now I'd like to introduce a segment that we teased on our podcast before. This is Snack Time with HighSpeedDining. He is our resident fine dining expert and TikTok famous food purveyor. I don't know a better way to describe it. He just knows food. He knows what's good. So we're going to have him on and we'll be describing the top 3 dishes from this elimination challenge and seeing which order he would eat them in and which ones were his favorite. So welcome to the show.
Let's do this. I am special. I feel special. You guys, what an introduction. That was just so lovely. I'm excited for this. The first real episode of the new season 21 of Top Chef aired. And I actually watched it in its entirety, so I'd be much better and have my facts down when I talk.
Perfect. That means you're already familiar with some of the dishes that we've got. I'm going to throw it to Gnocchi just to lay those top 3 dishes out for us.
All right. Make me hungry, girl. Woohoo. Yeah.
I feel Quiche would be better at explaining and describing these dishes. Whenever she describes a dish, she always makes my mouth water. However, I'll give it a go. All right. So the top 3 dishes, and actually this was the challenge. I guess we should probably say what the challenge was. The challenge was that the chef testants had to make either a soup for Kristen, a whole roast chicken for Tom, or a stuffed pasta for Gail. And the top 3 dishes, so there was one top dish from each of those cohorts, and the top soup was made by Manny, and that was a green pozole with chicken and charred salsa verde. And then the top pasta was made by Michelle, and that was a ricotta and lobster stuffed pasta with charred corn sauce and chorizo. And then the top roast chicken was made by Danny, and it was a herb roasted chicken, brown butter sherry vinaigrette, and the chefs raved about his carrot miso puree. And quick side note, Danny, for your information, High Speed Dining, is actually the executive chef for Saga Hospitality. So that's CrownShy Saga, the Michelin star restaurants in New York.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a couple of great restaurants. One's on the bottom floor, CrownShy's on the bottom floor of this huge skyscraper, and then Saga's on the top floor. Incredible views. You really get to see the city in a crazy way. So, yeah, I watched the episode last night and really enjoyed things too. The challenges were kind of fun between the soup, the pasta, and the chicken.
That is true. And that's something that we were discussing a little bit earlier in the podcast. We were talking about how the way that this challenge was structured, as the dishes were brought to the table to these judges, it felt like they were each getting a 3-course meal, because they started out with pasta, that's the first dish. Then they went to soup, which is the second, and then they went to the chicken. So we wanted to pry into your fine dining expertise and get a little insight. What order would you eat these dishes in if you knew you were going to have Michelle's pasta, Danny's roasted chicken, and Manny's soup? Which order would you eat these in?
I don't eat food like a normal person, first off. I do a lot of exercise and walking and things, and I like my carbs pretty early on in my meals sometimes. So I would have started my meal with the pasta, get some carbs in me, and but that soup, beautiful green with cabbage in it, it looked great. And the They all said some really good things about it too. They were saying they couldn't stop eating that one. And of course, chicken for your final, chicken for the main course. That's the way I would go. It's a pretty simple way to do it. I think most people would start with soup first, but I go right into the pastas and things. It was fun to watch the judging. When you're judging so many different foods coming to your table at once, I always question if the first couple of foods get a higher rating because the palates are fresh and clean. And do you guys have any thoughts on that?
That's a really good point. Yeah, because my understanding is the way the dishes get served is they just draw straws. It's the look of the draws. My understanding is how they do it to try and make it fair. So
yeah, I would probably want to cook something really hot and just burn the palates of the judges so it screws with everyone who comes after me.
Oh gosh. Just sabotage everyone.
A high risk maneuver.
It is a game.
You bring up a good point with the order in which things happen, because as we discussed, Gnocchi and I were talking earlier about when the soup category was brought up. The first three to present their dishes, merry group of fellows, they were doing great. But then the next two, who rounded out the soup category, they didn't shine as brightly as the first three soups that the judges were presented with. And that might have something to do not only with the composition of the dish, which there were some flavor complaints with them, and a few small criticisms, but it also might have to do with the order in which they received it, because they got three incredible, distinct, unique soups, and then followed up with two that they were able to find at least something small to pick out about it that wasn't quite right. So that is a good point. I do think that does play a large role in judging, but I hadn't really thought about it before.
Yeah, that's a thought that always comes to mind for me, because when I sit down at a restaurant, that first dish, I'm usually starving, and it's just like, bring it on. And first bite or two, you're just like, this is incredible. And as the meal goes on and you fill up a bit, you often go, is it really just not as good, or am I full and satisfied by this point?
As hunger goes down, discernment increases.
Yeah.
But that's what makes these judges professionals. I think they do know what they're doing and know how to handle that and approach it in a very fair way.
Definitely. I do have one more question, since you are our resident fine dining expert, about these dishes. So you're sticking with the order that they presented them in. So you're going the pasta, and then you're doing the soup, and then you're doing the chicken. So you would have been comfortable sitting right up there with the other judges. You're not asking for things out of order. But I'm wondering, is there something that you would have paired this 3-course meal with? Is there like a certain drink that you would have taken with it, or something that you would think would have completed this experience for you?
Well, I do not drink alcohol or much, I keep it really to just water, but I would have loved some great breads to go along with it. You can do some dipping of breads in your soup. With a pasta, there's always a sauce, and you just want to be able to slurp up and not waste any of that sauce. So a good bread can always come in really handy for that.
Do you have a type of bread in mind? We thinking French bread, we thinking pumpernickel, some cheddar bay biscuits from Red Lobster. What are we thinking?
Yes, please. My key is just a bread that is very spongy, so that way you can really dip it into the bowl and into the soup. And who's cooking the bread on these kind of shows? That's the hard part then.
That's true. Yeah, I doubt you're gonna find a bag of Wonder Bread under the counter. I feel like that is a Top Chef no-no.
As a Top Chef veteran, I got to say it's incredibly rewarding and delightful to bring along two newbies for the new season and watch you two discuss.
You're doing good work here, Gnocchi. You're doing very, very good work.
The Lord's work, yes.
The Lord of Top Chef's work. You're welcome. Desert Island. You're on a desert island. You have to choose one of these dishes: the pozole, the stuffed ricotta lobster pasta, or the roast chicken. Which one are you taking with you? High Speed Dining.
Now, this is what you're going to be eating until you're rescued? Every meal, every day?
Yes, that's it.
Or until you die.
Yeah,
Whichever happens first.
Well, I'm a pretty good fisherman, so I'd like to think I'd be able to get my own fish. You have to go with the chicken, I think. That's the one thing that's a protein.
Oh.
You got to go with chicken. I think there are lots of people on islands who eat a lot of chicken as well, but you don't hear about the big lobster pasta bake, but you hear about the chicken bakes and all the roasts and all that stuff.
Oh my gosh. Come on now. Come on. I'm picking the pasta.
If you give me 5 days a week on chicken, one day with the pasta and one day with the soup. That would make me happiest. But that's not what the rules were.
Okay. No, it's not. But I could get down with that too. That does sound nice.
That was a lot of fun. I want to be a judge on one of these shows one of these days.
Yeah.
Well, that raises the question: if you were a judge, which of these 3 top dishes would actually be your winner?
Hard to say, but I mean, they did give the soup the win, right?
Yes, Manny is the one who walked away with immunity.
Based on all their descriptions of things, soup could have massive amounts of flavor and pop to it. I think I would have gone with the soup too.
Okay.
Fun stuff though, and I think Kristen did a great job hosting. And I felt it was like a Big Brother for food type of event happening, because they did show a lot of camaraderie and people getting along, and like, you guys are all nice to each other. Where's the cutthroat action? Scream, call each other names. Come on.
Oh my goodness, it's the first episode. I think we can relax. I'm sure tensions will rise as things go on.
Oh, everything's always friendly in the beginning. We'll see what happens as the season progresses. Your early seasons of Top Chef were a little bit more in the reality TV mold, where they cast characters with talent, and they seemed to privilege you had to have both personality and talent. And now it's a lot more talent first. That doesn't mean things won't go down. It's a lot less crazy personality driven and more, do you actually have the chops to be here?
All right. Well, I'm excited to go through this journey with you guys and offer my 2 cents along the way. So it's nice to be a part of this and hanging out with some fellow foodies and talking shop. Top Chef. Woohoo!
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us for our segment of Snack Time.
I'm off.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us. I think we'll hop into some tasty morsels at the end of this episode. All right, as we get to a close of this episode, covering the very first episode of season 21 of Top Chef, we're going to get into some tasty morsels. A little few notes to leave you guys on. I'll hand it over to Gnocchi to start us off.
Oh, yes. I wanted to briefly chat about Dish with Quiche and also Last Chance Kitchen. And these are the web series that are associated with Top Chef for this season. Last Chance Kitchen has been the web series, the spin-off web series for that since season 9 of Top Chef in Texas. So they're continuing that tradition. And for those of you who do not know, chefs who are eliminated from the main competition on Top Chef, they go into Last Chance Kitchen, which I like to call LCK, and they go into LCK. Whoever went, each one that you go in, and then you compete against all the eliminated chefs, and whoever wins, who's ever the last chef standing last, is able to come back into the main competition and potentially win. Last Chance Kitchen should start next week once another chef is in LCK, and then it'll run concurrently along with the regular season. So we'll see what David does in LCK. And then the other web series, this is new for this season, is Dish with Kish. When I was reading synopses about it, I thought it sounded an awful lot like what would Quiche do?
Great.
However, I watched the first Dish with Quiche, and it's kind of cute. They're using dish in multiple ways. So they're both using it to talk about the challenge on the show, so the actual dish, but they're also using it just kind of dish about Top Chef and give you a little bit of a behind the scenes glimpse of Top Chef. And I had mentioned earlier how they're really taking advantage of the fact that they have 20 seasons of history. And then Kristen Kish, she won season 10. And so they're bringing all of that into Dish with Kish. It's a real treat for longtime fans of the show, because if you've been with the show for 20 seasons, her guest this week was Stephanie Izard, who won season 3 of Top Chef. So 17 years ago, she came on, she cooked a dish, and the dish they cooked actually wasn't any specific dish that the chefs cooked. They cooked with leftovers though. So they kind of talked about I guess they kind of leaned into the final challenge, which was using leftovers. And so that was the sort of framework that that this particular episode of Dish with Kish was about. And so while they were cooking a dish with leftovers, they managed to pull in Top Chef history. They showed how they do the beauty shots behind the scenes. And Stephanie Seymour, who I mentioned in our intro episode as being unjustly eliminated because of someone else having immunity and not her. She's actually a food producer on Top Chef now. So it was nice to see her behind the scenes. And she showed Stephanie Izard and Kristen Kish the behind the scenes where the dishes go. So when the chef tests a cook, what you may not be aware of is they always have to make enough dishes for obviously who's ever eating. So the number of judges on the panel, if there's anyone else, like if they have people come in like 100 dishes, 50, whatever, however many dishes, but there always has to be one extra dish. It's never mentioned, but that one extra dish they have to make. And it's a requirement. If you don't make Like, let's say there's 2 judges, you have to make 3 dishes. Let's say you only make 2. Even if there's enough for the judges, you're still disqualified because you have to make that 3rd
Oh,
dish because they
jeez.
need that dish to go on TV.
Oh,
That's the
yeah.
beauty dish. Like, so what happens is the hands go up and we don't see it, but
Mhm.
their culinary team, it's like a pit stop at a race car track, at a car race where they zoom in and they grab those beauty dishes, right? Those extra dishes, and they grab those and take those backstage as quickly as possible because they want to get those on camera before they start to, just like they want to get the judges in front of the food as quickly as possible. They want to
Right.
get that beauty dish in front of the camera as soon as possible, especially if it's ice cream or sorbet. Like, they want to get that on camera.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I had mentioned previously the scratch and sniff moment that us longtime food TV viewers all enjoy, those beauty close-ups. Those are the extra dishes everyone makes. And those get shot separately, special lighting,
Huh.
so you can really see the dish and they can take their time with it, right? I think it's a fun companion to Top Chef for sure.
I like it that Top Chef is putting out extra content so that if you cannot be held over the week in between each Top Chef episode, you can scratch that itch with a little bit more Top Chef content in different ways, and they're educational too, which is really cool.
Right? Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we'd like to remind you that you can find us on social media at Food and Dine Podcast or just Food and Dine. Through those avenues, you can follow us and you can find our podcasts where podcasts are hosted. We'd like to thank you for joining us on this very exciting episode 1 of season 21, episode 1 officially of Food and Dine for our Top Chef podcast. Hope that wasn't too confusing. Welcome to the table. Let's eat.